Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Cannon. I will be one of your program facilitators. The Story Strong program is designed to help empower families and individuals as they navigate the uncertainties presented by certain issues. Story Strong is part of the Libraries Build Communities initiative, a collaboration between the University of South Florida School of Information Responsive Librarianship Group and the Pasco County Public Library Cooperative. This project was funded under the provisions of the Library Services and Technology Act from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Florida's LSTA program is administered by the Department of State's Division of Library and Information Services. I'm going to hand it over to Kim now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kim, and I am the branch manager at the South Holiday Library. Today, we have Betsy King, a retired librarian and a tax prep professional. Volunteer, sorry. She's done it so long, I feel like you're a professional, Betsy. And so she'll be talking today with us about how to prepare your taxes. Take it away.
I'm Betsy King, and I work at the both for the AARP and for VITA volunteer tax programs in Hillsborough County. And I've been doing this. This is my 9th year. I learn more every year. And this year has by far been the most complicated season for doing taxes. We've run into a lot of people who have never filed before and realize that they need to do it. We have people who have had problems, financially, and therefore they've either lost jobs, had unemployment, or for various reasons, things have really complicated this year. We've had to deal with that. The stimulus checks have to be addressed through the tax program, and there's a lot of information that is still being developed. There are places to get your taxes done for free, and there are, and I'd like to go through some of those with you. You can do it yourself. You can go online. You can have some help. I'm not as familiar with Pasco County, but we'll go through as what I know of it. If you do not owe taxes, if you do not have money that you owe, there is no penalty for not filing. Presumably you want to file because you're getting money back from a stimulus check or because you had money withheld from a paycheck. Even if it was only $10, you would get that money back from the IRS. But if you don't owe, the deadlines do not matter. You can file up to 3 years in the future. We've had several people last year who did not file because they saw the sites were shut down early, and therefore we can do it now, and they can do last year's return also. Our big problem is that there's a lot of places that you can go and get your taxes done for free. There used to be a lot, and then this year, because of all the COVID restrictions, many of the sites are closed or have limited capacity. And we recognize that there's going to be places that will be available to do your taxes after the season is over with. All this is going to be by appointment. And in the last couple of weeks, everybody's scrambling around trying to figure out how to do things. So the deadline has been moved so that there's no deadline at all for anything until May 17th. The tax date of April 15th has been moved for that extra month. It's a Saturday. So that even if you owe money, if you filed your return but haven't paid or anything, you don't need to do anything until getting the mail into May 17th. The IRS has granted us that leeway. If you, I'm trying to look at some of my notes here. If you have no income, but you did not, and you got your stimulus checks as you expected, then there is no reason to do it. If you had income, but you had nothing withheld from your paycheck, and you got all your stimulus checks taken care of, again, there's nothing you need to do. You don't need to worry about trying to get your return done. Just take a breath and talk to people next year when hopefully there's more options available. The programs that I work on are VITA, which are sponsored by the United Way or else Prosperity Campaign, depending on what county you're in, is in the AARP tax aid program are two programs that are supported by they support the IRS. They are very similar, and all the preparers are volunteers. All the tax returns are done for free, and there is, we we get as many people as we can to help volunteer. They've all gone through training. I've done training myself. I've also gone through training classes, and then I have to pass an IRS certification test to show that I do know a sufficient tax law. These have to be done every year. So whenever there's a change in the tax laws and everything else, or just a refresher, we have to go through it again. So feel free, confident that when you go to these sites, they are free. In order to find out where they are, and unfortunately in Pasco County, many of the sites were shut down this year because they don't have the volunteers to do the preparation, or the sites themselves are still closed to the public. We're hoping that some of those might open up again since we're extending the tax returns, or that they're going to have things available off season up through September, October, but we don't have anything in place yet for that. Hillsborough County can service Pasco County. There may be other counties around that have the same kind of programs, can take people from other areas. However, none of us have that information available to know where it's going to be yet. There'll be announcements elsewhere. If you wanted to have it done, have somebody do your return for you for free, those are the options that I know of. There may be others, but the VITA and AARP sites, which are listed on the IRS website for getting your taxes done for free, there's a link to the VITA portal, volunteer portal, and there's one for the AARP that you put your zip code in and they will show you the locations. I think there's like one in Port Richey, Newport Richey, possibly in Holiday. There's only two in Pinellas County. There's 2 or 3 in Hillsborough County, and most of those are appointments. You link to set up an appointment. The phone numbers don't work well because they just don't have the staffing to handle those, but it's the places to start to find out where you can get them for free and get appointments. I know the site that I'm at Town and Country Library, all of our appointments are full. When somebody cancels, obviously people are checking because the appointments open up and then they disappear very quickly again. Some of these sites are drop in, leave the forms and come back the following week. Some are, or leave the forms for them to scan. They're not keeping the forms, they're just scanning them generally. And then some of them are you wait and have the return done right on place. If you are comfortable doing it yourself, there are several options. Again, the IRS website has links to things like TurboTax and TaxAid, or TaxWise, H&R Block. All these companies have what they call their free file program, that if you go to the IRS and link through there, it's free depending on your age and how what your total income is. This was an agreement the IRS has made with with these companies to allow them to be linked from the IRS site, and then they will offer free taxes. These you would have to do yourself. You would sign into any of these, create an account, and it would take you through question by question by question. What is your name? What is your social security number? What is your address? Do you have any children or people living with you that you can claim? And it will just walk you through, do you have any W-2s? What's in block 1, block 2, block 3? This kind of thing. And so if you have social security, what's in block 3, block 5, and then you just fill all this information out. The software is very good at doing all the calculations for you so that you can work it through yourself, as long as you're not too intimidated by using a computer and clicking on the squares to put in the numbers. I don't know how well it works on tablets or phones. Although the software is designed to use that, it doesn't do as well as on a desktop computer. Once you've done all of that, you go through. There should be no charge if your income is less than about $72,000. And then you can submit it electronically. And then hopefully, it'll also allow you to print out a copy of your return. So if you don't have a availability of a printer, you can go back in later. All these programs also allow you to stop and then log back in later to finish up. Some of these will do state returns. Some of them will do, when you look at them there, they won't do Florida. There's other requirements for them. You have to have a certain age limit. So those you would check out and see. There's also the United Way Suncoast, which doesn't really cover Pasco County. There may be a similar one in Pasco County for United Way, has links where you can go ahead and doesn't have any limits at all. All these programs, and including the ones that we have where we have the free VITA and tax aid preparation for you, have limits on what you can do, particularly the VITA and tax aid. We do not do any businesses, self-employment, unless you have no employees. And some sites do not do it at all. So if you have a 1099-K, which is an Uber, or a 1099 NEC, or a 1099 MISC, where you have been a contract employee for somebody, so they have not taken out money, then that would be something that you'd have to check with that particular site or organization to see if they can handle. I know our site, we do them, but they take a lot more time. So those are places that you can go. If you really have to do it, then you have to use a pay preparer. We can't recommend any of them. Sometimes the accountants are as inexpensive as the ones on the street. So you should be able to call and get an estimate if you had to do it that way. But you don't need to file. If you don't need to file, there's no deadline. But if you do need to file, or you want to file and you're comfortable doing it yourself, there are several ways in which you can get help. The stimulus checks that came out, we got one last spring. I think they were going out from between April and July. Then you should have gotten another one in January. Those, even though that one in January came in 2021, that is reconciled on your 2020 return. If you did not get the stimulus checks that you thought you would, that's when you want to file a return, even if you have no income or have no reason to file, because that's the way you would claim the missing money. The first one that came out, the EIP economic impact payment, one was $1,200 for each taxpayer, and for each dependent under 16, it was $600. If you had a dependent, a student or a parent that you were supporting that was over that, there was no claim for it. Also, if you owed back child support or back taxes, that would get claimed and taken out of there. They changed the law again for the one that came out in January, so that the stimulus check was $600 and for each taxpayer, and $500 for dependents, young dependents, and but they were not pulling back the child tax support if the IRS normally held that out. This new one that's starting to come out now will be $1,400, and that includes all dependents. And there's a lot more, things there. But any kind, if you have or have not gotten that, will have to be later, as far as the 2021 tax return or otherwise. So that one we don't worry about. But the other two, if you did not get what you thought you should, then this is where you would have to claim it. If you got more than you should have, supposing they were basing it on 2019 income, and in 2020 your kid moved away from home or whatever, but they paid you for it anyway, they're not going to take that back. But when the software calculates it, they'll take that into account. The IRS will send you in their return, it should be the entire amount of your tax refund plus any stimulus checks that you're missing. If it doesn't match with their records for the stimulus checks, they will make the adjustments before they send the money to you. So keep that in mind. So if you don't know how much you got before you really start into this, you want to dig through your bank account statements or your records or whatever else to make sure you know how much you actually got, you or a spouse, how much you actually got on those checks. You would also want to, collect any kind of paperwork that's related to your taxes. There would be, the tax statements that came out in January or the first part of February. If you got any letters at all from the IRS, make sure you look through all of those and understand what they are, or try to figure out. There should be, the IRS will only mail you letters, so there'll be no phone calls or anything like that. But if you got a letter that was addressing another issue, you need to make sure that you have that also. You can, like I said, you can get your taxes done for free, but it's going to be hard to get an appointment right now. If you can do it yourself, there's ways to get to those links, and I can perhaps get that to the librarians and they can get it out to you a little bit later. You can do it yourself. They're fairly straightforward. Pasco is a little bit different from Ellis and Hillsborough counties, but you can cross over back and forth. The biggest problem is that there's a limited number of volunteers. There's some tax law changes that have just come out, and they haven't even gotten into the software. We don't even know how we're going to do it yet. In the past, if you had unemployment, then there was that was considered taxable income. It was added to your adjusted gross income, and you would be taxed on it. That's why a lot of unemployment had withholding money taken out for your taxes before you even started. The IRS has ruled, or the tax law, the recovery law that was just passed, said, by the way, we're not going to tax you on that unemployment that you got in 2020. Even though we took money out and even though the statement indicates that you should be taxed. But the software to figure and how to calculate that has not been taken care of yet. So if you had unemployment, you definitely do not want to do anything right now. It's possible the IRS can take care of it all by themselves and they won't affect you at all. But I would say for another probably couple weeks at least, nobody will know what to do about unemployment. So anybody that comes to my site and has unemployment, we says, well, we can start your return, but we're not going to finish it. We're not even going to really evaluate it until we get rulings from the IRS about how we're supposed to go about doing that. The other big thing is if you got money, health insurance through the marketplace, that's Obamacare last year, you should have gotten a Form 1095A. That also is going to be affected, might be affected by this new law that was just passed, which is, even though it came out in 2021, it affects 2020 returns. Again, that one we're also having to put on hold. There will be more information available in all sorts of newspapers, on the TV, on the radio, and when that happens, the software programs will get caught up, and then they can address that. But right now, we can't do those at all if you have unemployment or marketplace information. Child tax credit, earned income credit, things like that are probably going to be affected by these new calculations as far as taxable income goes. So that is, again, something that we don't really know for sure if it's going to affect the total calculations. The IRS is putting out information on they've got a daily thing that goes out. The newspapers are picking it up. I don't know how much the radios and TV are pulling it out, but everybody that's preparing taxes is following this very carefully right now, so that we can know what's going to happen. That extra month of delay is mainly to catch up and figure out how to deal with the problem issues. If yours is a straightforward return with just a W-2, a paycheck, and maybe some retirement money and whatever, that's not a problem. Another issue that may come up, if you had to take money out of your retirement fund, that's a 401k from work or a 1099-R from an IRA, and you had to pull it out early. Normally there's a penalty for taking it out early because they want you to keep that money in there until retirement age. This year, there is no penalty for taking it out early. You still have to pay taxes on it because it's considered income, but you don't have the penalty. And the software does acknowledge that, and it changes the forms a little bit so that you're not being penalized. Again, trying to do all this by hand is probably, well, I don't know, I wouldn't say impossible, but it would be very prone to accidents. So you somehow or other, either you need to do it yourself if you have access to a computer, if you have somebody in your family who has, can walk through it with you, that's another option, or just hold off and then hopefully be able to find one of the free sites that can work with you later on. But even the stuff online, straightforward you can do now. If you pulled money out of an IRA, you had you had unemployment or you had marketplace insurance, you probably should hold off until the publicity comes out that says those are all taken care of and they know how to deal it. That's sort of it in a summary. And if some of the people that are listening to this have questions or can bring things up that I can then pursue, I would like to, address individual questions. That's a very fast summary of everything.
That was great. Thank you so much, Betsy. I have two questions for people who may be watching this later on. It might be helpful. And I know you kind of touched on it before, but let's say I haven't filed taxes for, 5 or 6 years. I don't make a lot of money. Maybe I'm on some sort of assistance, but I'm scared because I don't want to get in trouble. What would your tax advice be to someone?
We see a lot of people like that. They come in, they are so terrified just to think about taxes, even if they're comfortable and they know they're getting money back. It's a scary thing
Right.
if you don't really know how to look at the forms and understand it. If you haven't filed back taxes for quite a while, first of all, take care of this year's, and if you're limited to being able to do this year's, get that out of the way. You have 3 years to go back and claim anything that was withheld. So that can be done. We're allowed to do 17, 18, and 19, 2008, 17, 18, and 19 taxes. We can go ahead and do those just as late. If you get money back, the IRS actually will pay you interest on that. Then you claim that as income the next year.
Right.
If you do, they don't let you get away with anything. If it's longer than that, even if you get money owed to you, you cannot claim it. That's a 3-year limit. So if you don't, I would tend to say don't worry about it too much. Take care of this one and then look at the others. If you had nothing withheld and you didn't really have to pay taxes anyway, didn't have to do returns, don't even try to go back and do anything.
Great. So don't be afraid. File your taxes.
No.
You may get something back. No one's going to come and knock on the door in the middle of it.
Yeah. If you look at the forms that you get, any kind of tax forms you have, look for the block that says income tax withholding. It's a different number. It's a little number. If those are all zeros or blanks, that means that you didn't have any money taken out of your paycheck or out of your retirement or out of your Social Security. Therefore, you probably aren't going to get anything back.
Right. Excellent.
Now, you have, so that way you wouldn't, and if a single person made, I think it's $12,600, that's standard deduction. If you're married, it's twice that, $24,000. So, if you're a single and you'd made less than $12,000, not counting Social Security, then, and you had nothing taken out, you shouldn't even bother doing your return. for if you had some taken out, then you probably want to claim and get that back. If you're married, it'd be $24,000, and as you get older, the number goes up a little tiny bit.
Okay, so this kind of goes into my second question then. Now, we've all been hearing about stimulus payments, and especially people who are homeless and who don't normally file taxes, but there's a lot of confusion about how to get these payments, especially with the new child tax credit payments that are coming, where there's, if you have a couple of children, it may be coming through the IRS, but you don't make a lot of money. So how do you make sure that the IRS can find you? Right?
That's a tricky one.
Right? Yes.
If whatever address the IRS has on file for you, which would be the last time you filed, that's the way they would contact you. They mail a letter, or a check or whatever else, and the post office will not forward it. So if you have changed your address, then you probably want to, there's a form, I don't know, it's online, you could print it out. I don't know that you can change it online, you'd have to mail it in. You would want to change your address so that they have the current address on file. Then any communication will come through that, because the IRS will not call you, they only communicate by letter. So, if they don't have your right address, even if there's a problem, they can't get hold of you. If you don't have a bank account, if you have a bank account, and some of the credit unions, you can open up a credit union account for probably $5. Then you will have an account, and there are ways to go with, especially if you do a return, you can put that bank account number into your tax return, and therefore it will be direct deposit. It's probably months faster. The direct deposits go in probably within a couple, 3 weeks after whatever action is being taken. If it has to be by mail, there's the risk of it being lost or being, waylaid or taken, or just taking a lot longer to process, because now you have people handling the documents. It's not all done by a computer. If you don't have either one, you still need to have an address before they can reach you. And if you're on Social Security, they probably have it already. Although I know some people with Social Security got checks mailed to them last year. You need to make sure your Social Security address is correct also. But if you don't have either one, there are ways that the IRS can give some sort of like a debit card or something, a payment card for you. I do not know how it works. I really have never really talked with anybody that has that.
So, but if you have a bank account, then the easiest way to just file a return, just file a
return, and then that way it'll be on file, anything that comes in. Now, the new child tax credit, what they're trying to do is have that so that you get some of it all during the year rather than having to claim it toward the end. I think they're talking about doing that either in maybe July. I have not paid close attention to that yet. So that would be a sort of a mental deadline. You want to make sure that everything is in place.
Great. I mean, those are the only two questions I have, and I think that's wonderful for our audience, people who may be listening.
And I know that people have gone to some of the credit unions who've never had a bank account. They've gone in, talked to somebody. I've known of 2 people that have done this. They've paid $5 to get their account, and then they have a checking account and a savings account, basically, that they can then use from then on for banking.
Oh, that's great. So they just go in, just pay. It depends on every, institution, correct? I mean,
right. Now, if they're getting Social Security, they already have an account of some sort, because Social Security is, I think, pretty much requiring you to have a direct deposit in some way. The one thing that you would need to know to do a return or to contact the IRS in any way is what the routing number is for the bank and the account number. There's a different account number for savings accounts and for checking accounts. The routing number is sort of a public number, which is like the address for the bank. If they open it, I know Bank America has a common one for Florida, but if they happen to open their account in another state, that routing number may be different, even though they actually do their banking here. So that's something you want to go to the bank or the credit union, and then you get a little card, just a wallet card that writes all that out.
Oh, great. Excellent. Excellent. Does anyone else have any questions for Betsy?
Another issue that comes up that people don't always understand is the earned income credit.
Right.
The idea of all tax law is to make people do something. They give you, if you have put money into a retirement fund, a 401k at work, if your income is low enough, they actually pay you a little bit in order to say that you're saving. And so you get a retirement credit. As you make more money, that reduces and gets smaller and smaller. If you go to college and you pay tuition, or you pay buy books or something like that, you get an educational credit as long as you have the records to show it. That then, because they want you to go ahead and get your education. If you're a teacher and you pay money of your own personal money for educational supplies, you can get a credit for that. If you work, they want to encourage people to work, but they're not quite making enough. So they have what's called earned income credit that gives you a bonus for working, so that you have a little bit more than you would just with your paycheck. And that goes up and works its way up to a certain point, and then it starts cutting down, figuring you no longer need that support quite as much. If you're single with no children, it's a fairly small amount. If you are, you're married, filing jointly, and you have 3 kids, it may be, you're making, $15,000, $18,000 or whatever, or more, a little bit more than that. You may get a big chunk, this earned income credit. And that is based, of course, on your income. And that's one of the things that they're trying to figure out, where on the lines of the tax form does all of that show up. So but that's very important. There will be a question, they will always ask you, did you get earned income credit in the past that then the IRS denied you? Because you see people there's fraud. They say, oh, I've got 3 kids and they don't really, or something of this sort. If the IRS came back and said, oh, it's just a mistake or whatever, we have to explain why you're eligible to get it now and you weren't then. And otherwise it will be denied and you wouldn't get it. I think we've only had 1 or 2 cases of that in all the years that I've been doing this. But it's a question that causes confusion.
Right. All of it is confusing. That's like confusing plus, right?
I know that the United Way in Tampa is unitedwaysuncoast.org/VITA. has a place where you can type questions and get answers to them. Again, you have to have access to email to do that. But it's a way, I don't understand this or whatever. They have preparers who will be able to take those questions and try to get back with you. So then there are ways to get answers even if you're doing it yourself.
Great. Excellent. Kim, do you have anything?
Well, I was just going to say, that segues nicely into the question that I had. What are your thoughts about tax prep resources that are available online, such as TurboTax and some of these other free ones? And do you have any other resources that you can recommend?
If you go through the IRS website as a portal, and then you jump to TurboTax or whatever else, then you will have access to their free file program. This was a program, all the tax preparers got together. They have spent millions of dollars on the lobbyists to say, we want our business to keep going. And the IRS has said, okay, well, if you allow people to file for free, if they're low income, we'll let you do that. The problem is if you go directly to to TurboTax or to one of these others, H&R Block, they have that hidden so far down their page, you're never going to find it. If you start out, once you've created the account for that year, you're okay. But if you start out at the IRS site, you can get to it first. the problem, the objection I have is that actually the IRS could do this whole thing all on their own. They know how much you've made. They have the reports of the 1099s, the W-2s. They have all that on file because they're going to match what we submit to what they have as a record. And if it's different, they'll come back to you. But the lobbyists have said, no, you can't just say, here's what we think you owe, either pay that or get refunded for that, or else tell us why it should be different. And that would take care of probably 75% of the people. But, you know, this is the problem with having the, you know, that's why these commercial ones, they do have a vested interest in getting you to use their services. However, for the majority of people, they could use those for free. If you go to the IRS website where they talk about, you know, the free file program, it'll tell you for each of the different, probably 10 different tax softwares, there are certain requirements that they have to have. Some of them, a lot of them will not do self-employment, and that's something else I'll talk about in a minute. They will also, they will only do certain states, but they can also do, some of them will do state returns. So if we have a snowbird that comes down here, but they actually have a job part-time up in New York, they've got to do income tax returns for New York or Pennsylvania. And they can go to the websites there to do it, and they're usually fairly simple, but the software will take care of that, at least once they get updated with those new changes. Some of the ones have lower income limits. Some are really age restricted in different ways. So you want to make sure to check the website when you go to the IRS site. They'll tell you what the requirements are. And you can always start them and then just cancel out or go back and put zeros in if you don't want to keep it there. But then the one that I recommend is, I know the UnitedWaySuncoast.org/VITA has a link where you can request a link to do your own software. It's using TaxSlayer, and it's part of the agreement with the IRS. You put your name and email in there, you'll get an email back that tells you where you can it gives you a link to a special, sort of a hidden link that you can create your account, have no limits, and it's free. It's part of an agreement with the IRS, but we're not allowed to publish it.
Oh, okay.
Because it can't be on a outward-facing website. That's why you have to request it, and then it can be sent to you. And it's, again, it's confusing if you're panicked or you're trying to do it in a hurry, because it goes through question by question, and a lot of them that have nothing to do with you. Do you have farm income? Do you have household employees? Things that you can just have to know, and you have to keep working back and forth. My understanding is it does not work very well with tablets. You pretty much need a full screen in order to see the menus easily. But it will go you through the whole thing. If you use that link and create your account, your username can be, John Doe, although it has to be unique. So it may be John Doe Pasco or something like that. And then your password would be whatever you choose it to be. You can change your password later. If you go back the following year, it probably will be a different link, but the account will still be there. So AARP has a similar program. These are called FSA, Facilitated Self-Assisted. So you're doing it yourself. You're responsible for everything, because the preparers can't look at, but you can ask questions through a web interface. So those are what I would recommend for somebody who is comfortable doing them themselves, is use that, because there are no limits at all. And not only that, United Way will get the credit for having done that. We need those credits because we apply for grants. ARP and VITA both apply for grants to run this. I mean, there's papers to print out, there's forms, there's printers, all the supplies. The few staff people that support all of this, even though we have hundreds of volunteers that do those hours for free, there's still stuff there. So we'd like to have the credit. Oh, by the way, AARP, you do not have to be a member of the ARP to go to their sites. You do not have to be old. We've done teenage kids who are just filing on their own. And but people think, oh, I'm not a member of AARP or something like that. But that's not a restriction. We don't discriminate by that.
Right.
Another thing, just I'm jumping from spot to spot as I think about it.
That's great.
A child who wants to get their money back. They had a part-time job. They had $25 taken out of their paycheck. They want that back.
Mm-hmm.
If they jump in and do their own return, which they can do, but they have a parent that's supporting them. They're not living off on their own. Their parent is paying utilities or food or whatever. They're living at home. Then the parent can claim them and get the credit. The child cannot claim himself. So there should be a session. Can somebody else claim you?
Mm-hmm.
If they say, no, I'm doing it myself, and then the parent decides to claim the child to get the earned income credit or the child tax credit, it gets rejected.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had one, it took, because the kids jumped right in, did themselves, claimed themselves. It took 9 months for her to get her return filed. And she had, about probably $6,000 that she was getting back to her that she had to wait for until they got the child's amended, fixed before they could go back and take care of hers. So if you have if you're a parent, or and you're supporting a parent, parent doesn't even have to live with you. If you're paying their expenses,
Mm-hmm.
either you want to make sure that that person doesn't claim themselves.
So the IRS wants parents and children to talk.
Yes.
Okay.
And not only that, if they're going to college,
Right.
you need to keep track of all the expenses and everything. It's the parent that gets the credit, even though the child may be living in Tallahassee or whatever else. Their home base is still home. If they're under 23 years old and they are paying the tuition and that, the parent gets the credit. Now, if the scholarship is like a Pell Grant that pays sort of a full ride or pays more, so that the scholarship covers part of it, but part of it covers living expenses, that difference from between the scholarship and the grant goes as income to the child.
Mm.
Now, in many cases, the child doesn't make very much, so therefore it doesn't count at all. Or if it is, it's a very low income. But those get to be a little bit more complicated, and it's probably worthwhile going to prepare to take care of.
And I think you were going to mention something about self-employment.
Oh, self-employment.
Right.
This is, if somebody works as a contractor, they get a job and Uber, Lyft, all these delivery services are that way. If you're doing yard work for a company and they just pay you cash, or they may write, they'll give you a 1099 MISC or 1099 NEC, which stands for not elsewhere classified.
Mm.
They're reporting this number to the government and saying, we're giving you this money as a business. And therefore, you have to report it. If it's more than $400, you are also obligated to pay Social Security and Medicare expenses that the employer normally would take out of a regular paycheck. So you're going to be hit with anywhere from 15 to 25% of that income is going to be taxed.
Mm.
So it comes as a surprise. People that have been doing it a long time will pay an estimated taxes every quarter so they're not hit at the end of the year. However, when you have your income, I know that the Lyft and Amazon, they will give you a statement, I think it's a 1099K or the equivalent, that tells you what the actual income is, what the expenses are on their record, and what mileage you drove while you were on the computer or on the phone with them. However, if you keep track of your mileage, you went and you picked up pizza at one store and delivered it, then you had to drive back to another store and pick up something else. Or you were doing Lyft and you went from your house to the airport, and then you picked up somebody, took them to St. Petersburg from Tampa, and then you had to drive back to Tampa, but no passenger was there. That wouldn't show as a passenger, but if they have records of that mileage, then you can still count that as income, as mileage. The advantage of doing that is that it may reduce the net business profit that you make out of that. You may get $10,000, but if you're writing off $5,000 in expenses, then you're only going to be paying taxes on the $5,000. And you can't, you can't cheat. You can't lose money. You're not allowed to lose money if we do it anyway. But, it's worth that 57 cents a mile or whatever to keep track of all of your mileage. You can't count food. Everybody has to eat. You can't count the first trip of the day or the last trip of the day from home because that's commuting. Everybody may have to commute. So if you're working from home and you're driving a car and you have to go to the airport, that first trip doesn't count. It's only all the stuff in the middle. You go to the parking lot and you wait there and then you get another call. And then when you come home, that last trip home does not count. So the record keeping is very important.
I just want to say real quick, there are apps too that can help
Yes.
with that. I know that there are apps to help track all of that mileage stuff. So if you are Lyft or Uber, I'm sure you're aware of it.
Right. Yeah. I have not really used them. I don't know. The trick, of course, is the mileage when you are driving around. You can count if you have to have your phone. You can take, say, 50% of your phone bill. Your cell phone may count. Mileage includes gas, wear and tear, replacement tires, cleaning, all that kind of stuff counts in the mileage. You have to have your car repaired. You've got to get oil changes. None of that counts because it's rolled up into the what they give you as a credit. And you're actually, for the most part, better off because it also includes depreciation.
So if I do, because I think that was a great example. Let's say I do yard work, and the first job I drive to, that doesn't count. But then if I do 3 or 4 houses, those houses in between that I drive to, and then I go home doesn't count. But the ones in between would count. Okay, so
and if you have to go to the Home Depot and get another piece of tape for the weed whacker, that's expense. If you pay it yourself, if you get reimbursed, it doesn't. But if you anything like that you have to buy for your supplies, even the notebook that you buy 50 cents to keep track of everything.
Oh, excellent. There you go. Nice. Always keep track of everything. And if you don't know, there's,
we can always take it off later, but if you don't write it down and don't have some sort of record, we can't use it. The one thing that a lot of people I can claim my home as, have a home office. This gets to be complicated. The way it works, and somebody who has a true home office, they can say, okay, I'm using one room for an office and it's, 10% of the house. And so therefore I can write off 10% of everything. This gets to be very complicated. None of the free services will let you do that. We can't do it for you. You'd have to do it on your own. And once you start, you can't really stop because you're adding depreciation and everything like that, which is a long-running thing. So, if you have to buy, toner for your printer, or even if you have to buy a new computer that you're using primarily for that business, that will count if you bought for that year, if you have a receipt for it or a record on your credit card or something like that. But home office gets to be pretty complicated.
But I was working from home this year, so it's something at least to look into, or?
You could look into it. You probably are going to want to go to a paid preparer and have them take care of it. But once you start it, as long as you're going to keep that as a home office, and not only that, you're depreciating it from the value of your house, which means when you sell the house, you've got to have that record to how much you depreciated the value of the house from what you originally paid for it. So it does get complicated. Now, if you had to buy a desk chair because what you were sitting in didn't work, that would be an expense. If it's primarily for the work. As long as you, wait a minute, this is self-employment. If you're doing it as being a self-employed, if you're an employer, your employer does it, you cannot write off home office and you can't write off expenses if you're being paid on a W-2. Now, you may be able to do that in certain ways. Again, a paid preparer might be able to do it. I don't know how. It's something that's out of scope for us.
Okay.
If you are renting a room out or you have a second house that you're renting out and you have rental property or rental income, that again gets to be more complicated. And the free site, the VITA and tax aid sites cannot do rental property unless you are active military and you are stationed overseas or out of sight. If you just have somebody and you're sharing, you're sharing expenses and that kind of thing, then that just, you just count, you're both of you are head of household or married filing separately or single. You're just sharing expenses. If you have one person working and the girl, say you have the boyfriend's working and the girlfriend is not, and the girlfriend has a child, then it gets to be a little more complicated because you have dependents, depending on who's supporting them. And there are guidelines online that help you figure out, is this a dependent or not? And it depends on how much, if one person is paying more than half, who can claim the child, and those get to be a lot more complicated.
Okay, but that's all online, you said. A lot of that is online.
It's going to take research. It's going to take research. And again, sometimes you're better off going to a paid preparer. You may cost you a couple $100, but you may get more back. Another situation that we see occasionally is a married couple, but they want to file, and they're living together. It's not like one's disappeared, and they want to file married filing separately. Well, my husband owes back child support, and they're going to take everything and put it toward the back child support, but I'm earning money too. How do I do that? There's something called an injured spouse form that can be filled out that says, okay, the part of money that I earned comes directly to the refund. The part of the money that he earns goes to pay his back child support. So you're splitting it out. The injured spouse is the one who wants to get as much money as possible. If there's children, you give all the credit to the injured spouse rather than having it go to the other one, if they're your dependents, excuse me. And this is just a form that's in the software. It's going to ask about that. Very, very seldom. I think I've only seen one or two in my entire time where it's better off for a married couple living together to file as married filing separately instead of jointly. You lose a lot of credits. Social Security is taxed at the full amount because once you're if you file separately, you lose a lot of the earned income credit you don't get earned income credit and whatever. So we highly discourage it, and you can do some analysis to see which is better, but it doesn't usually come out. If, however, you have somebody, a couple, they're not divorced, but they say, oh, well, we're legally separated. Only if they have a court order that does that, and there's a few states, but not Florida, that has a legal separation. If they're not legally separated, then they are married filing separately. However, if one has disappeared, and I don't know what his social security number is, I don't know where he is or anything else, and this is with no children, you can file as married. You still have to do married filing separately. If you can't put their information down, you'll have to mail the return in. We can't do it electronically because we don't have a social security number for that spouse. However, if there are children involved, then you can be a head of household. If you haven't lived with your spouse for at least 6 months, and he doesn't come over, doesn't sleep over or anything like that, then you can be head of household. And then it doesn't really matter what the spouse or the semi-ex, what happens to him. And again, this is for a child, if you have a child that you can claim. So if you can't do head,
you could always, again, these are situations that someone can ask you, even if they don't know, they could go ahead and ask someone like you. Okay.
Right. And a lot of that is spelled out in the software. It'll say, is this a dependent or whatever else? There's all these software programs have a lot of error catching, so that there's ways to do that. And of course, a lot of it's all out there somewhere,
Right,
but it's hard to find. And if you don't, if you Google it and you do a good job of searching, then, and you find that the sources that you are looking at are valid. That's the big thing. If it's on the IRS website, or if it's on, say, a TurboTax or TaxSlayer website, then they usually spell that out. But if it's just somebody's opinion,
blog, right?
Yeah, then
my cousin doesn't know anything, so if he's listening, so anyways, that's good. Kim, do you have any other questions? Anything?
I don't. This was amazing. I learned so much.
And just, I guess, one last question for some of us, like fur babies, they're not tax deductible, right? Our fur babies.
And a cat's only if you have their Social Security card.
Oh, good. My cat does have one. He has two, actually. I don't know why.
Another thing is, if you are, or your spouse is not a citizen with a Social Security card, if they have an I-10, it's a government number that either allows them to work or just then they can be on your return. There are certain things that the software will allow them to do or not do. Or if you have a child who's not a citizen, you can still file them and get some of the credits for the child, whatever. But you have to have that card. If you don't have an I-10 number, you're undocumented. There are ways to handle that, but that is something that's beyond my understanding. If you have a child born in 2020, you say they've lived with you for 12 months, even if it's only been 3 days. You get credit for the entire year.
There you go.
If your spouse, everything is based on the December 31st. So if the spouse died in 2020, in the year, you're still married filing jointly that year. It's just like a final return, and then there's a place you say is deceased. If they passed away in January, we don't worry about that till next year.
Right. All deadlines. Yes.
Right.
And our deadline this year is May. What is it?
Well, in order to file, the official filing date, the time when we stop doing the tax season, is May 17th. Now, all these sites that have the online computer programs, that's not a problem. For all the sites that you would actually go and have the return done, that's their deadline right now. Although there'll be some gaps, and then they'll start up the off-season site. If you don't owe money, there's no penalty for not filing. If you do owe money, then you must file. You should file by the May 17th, or there will be a penalty for not filing. Now, if you owe money, that's sort of separate. If you've already filed, you owe money and you don't have it yet, you can hold. You could file now. Say you owed money. When the stimulus check came in, you could then pay off your tax. And as long as it's done before May 17th, there's no penalty.
Okay.
If you still don't have the money, then you can go to the IRS and make arrangements for a payment plan.
So don't be afraid. They're nice people. They'll take
and the IRS people really are on your side, even though you may not seem it. The payment, you will be paying interest on whatever you owe. If you are so totally in debt, there's no way you can ever pay it off. You're disabled. You can't pay back your bills. There are things called low-income tax centers, clinics, LITCs, and they will work with you to negotiate with the IRS to perhaps change how much you actually owe, or to do other things. So basically, Tampa Bay legal. There's several of them around. I think there's one in each county, LITC. And I think the IRS website, you can search and they'll get a list of all of those. And those will work with you. You call, you leave your name and your number and say, well, here's my situation. They'll pass the number on to the specialist. They'll eventually get back with you and see if they can help you. It's based to some extent on your income. So that's a place you can go for help.
Don't be afraid. Make contact, have communication.
If you don't have we have to use the name that's on your Social Security card. So if your name is, Juan Gomez Garcia,
Mhm.
then on the tax return, we have to put Gomez Garcia as the last name, even though you may not use the second last name,
Okay.
because the code, the way they do it is they use the social security number and the name, the last name, as the catch-all, to sort of the key to whether the return is matches up or not. If you have problems with Social Security, you never got the statement that you thought you were going to get, and you can go online and get a copy. But if you don't have ability to do that, or you have questions about your Social Security, make an appointment and go in and see them. You're much better off making an appointment, because they'll shuffle you into different lines.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a letter from the IRS that you don't understand and it doesn't make sense, you can make appointments to go see the IRS. They will take appointments. They will let you in. It may take a while, but don't just ignore it. I had a situation one time, and he said, well, I was getting letters from the IRS saying that somebody, that I owed money, and I was getting them for 6 months, and then they all at once stopped. I said, well, did you do anything? He said, no, but then all at once he got a collection number, a letter, because you can't just ignore them, And unfortunately, the backup for the phones are bad right now. So
Make an appointment, go down, talk, or talk to nice folks like you. Right. Excellent. Great. Okay. So we're just about out of time. I want to thank you so much. This is really helpful. Again, do you have a final website or email someone if they're watching this and they want information just to start out? What would be a good place to look at?
I don't know. Pasco County has their own support, and I'm not sure what they are. The starting point that we have that we've been using in Hillsborough County is UnitedWaySuncoast.org. It's all one word, /VITA, VITA.
Okay. And
That
so
will have a link to where you can make an appointment in Hillsborough County or Pinellas County or Sarasota County. They have something similar. You can search for VITA Pasco County to find something there. That the United Way Suncoast VITA site will also have a link for where you can ask questions, or where you can get a link to get the free software.
Great. Excellent.
Or
Excellent.
if you want to volunteer, we're always looking next year for volunteers.
There we go. Excellent. That's good. Kim, you want to bring us out?
I can do that. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Betsy, as always, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for your wealth of knowledge. It blew my mind. Amazing. Thank you guys so much, and hopefully we'll see everybody next week.
Great. Thank you.